Hey everyone, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about our current situation and how it relates to this class and what I've been trying to teach you in this class. So first, I'm going to start off with a couple of scenarios. So imagine you're a 31-year-old female, single, no kids, and you receive a phone call. They're telling you that your sister is going to the hospital, and you know that she's 38 weeks pregnant, so you're really, really happy. She's about to have a little girl. But they end up telling you that she's not going in because she's in labor. She's going in because she's having breathing difficulties. Turns out she's COVID positive, right? So you can't go in there because there's all kinds of rules and limitations in hospitals that they haven't rules that they have in place nowadays. So you're waiting for updates. And one of the first updates that they give you is that they had to, because of all kinds of complications, they had to remove the baby via C-section. So now there's a newborn baby girl. And for now, she's COVID negative. They also tell you that your sister, who's 28 years old, is on a ventilator. She no longer breathes on her own, right? And they've separated the baby from the mom. So you're waiting on the status, and days later, they're still testing the baby. You're getting updates every now and then, and the baby's constantly coming back negative. And so they're ready to release the baby, and they have nobody to release her to except for you. So you have to go pick up this newborn baby and take care of her because the mom is on a ventilator. And while you're on your way, you find out that they had to put a pacemaker in to your sister because the virus had caused so much damage to her heart that it just wasn't able to beat on its own. So your sister is 28 years old, got a newborn baby, can't take care of her because she's on a ventilator with a pacemaker. You are now stuck with this newborn baby, along with her 5-year-old other daughter. So you're, like I said in the beginning, you were a single mom, or you were a single girl, no kids. Now you have two kids, which are your sisters. So after your sister gets this pacemaker, she starts doing better, like most COVID patients do. But then she tanked once again, like most COVID patients that are on a ventilator do. They'll get better for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they tank. And so you're stuck in the situation. You have the baby, newborn baby, you have to take care of. You have the 5-year-old, and your sister is in a hospital in serious condition, and she may not make it at this point in time. You don't know whether or not she's going to make it, and even if she does make it, she's got a long road to recovery. The situation currently is unresolved. So sister's still in the hospital dealing with and fighting COVID. Let me give you another situation. This man and woman fall in love and they decided to get married. The only problem is it's 2020 and they've decided that their wedding date was going to be on Labor Day. So early September, they're in a small town and they decide to get married in a small town, invite their family and friends, and they're thinking it's not a big deal. It's not in the town, or they have very low numbers. In a lot of Texas towns, they have very, very low numbers. So they invite all the family and friends together. Oh, it's Jim. They've heard, of course, all the lies like it's just the flu. It's not a big deal. You don't have to wear a mask. If you're outside, socially distanced, and everything's going to be okay. But all these people are together. If you're at a crowded wedding, there's no way you're going to be able to social distance. And so they have this wedding, and it ends up being a super spreader event. And 7 of the family members are not here today. They died from COVID. Now, and only now, are the people, the bride and the groom, talking about how this is real. This is deadly. It's not just the flu. This is very, very serious. You need to take things seriously, right? Now, how many times have you heard someone in that same type of situation say exactly that? I didn't think it was real to begin with, but this is more than the flu. I just thought it was just the flu. Now I know it's more than the flu. This thing is deadly. Take it seriously, please. I'm actually getting tired of hearing those types of stories. By now, everybody should know that it's real. Everybody should know that this thing does kill. Everybody should know that it's contagious. That means it's easily spread from person to person. And currently, we've had a lot of distractions with the elections and all that stuff. Um, But you need to realize that we are in a bad situation right now when it comes to COVID. So if you look at this website here, which is Worldometer, you see the US has already had over 10 million cases, and our peak that and I'll show you the peak in a second. Our peak is actually, we're in the worst peak so far to date. Look in this red column right here, you can see our number of deaths today is over 1,300. And this is, it says now, I know, but it's been sitting there for about an hour. So um, that number is going to go up because the day's not over yet. We still have a good 5 hours left. Our numbers for the past 5 days have been over 1,000 deaths each day in the United States alone. Those are huge numbers. So if we look at some data from Johns Hopkins, this is showing our daily cases. So you can see back in March where it really started increasing. It actually probably started increasing before then. That's just when testing started becoming more available. There were all kinds of issues, if you remember, with testing, CDC sending out faulty tests, and people not being able to get tested when they were actually sick. Then we shut down, we saw a decrease, and then an increase in July. We started opening back up, shut down a little bit more, and then we see right now this huge peak, which is almost double in size. It is double in size, almost double in size from what we saw in July, but nobody's really talking much about it. I think I've seen a shift in our opinions. If you recall back in March, we had fear, and then we became educated. We learned how to defeat the spread of this virus. We can stop the spread of this virus, not down to nothing, but we can stop it a lot better than we're doing. And we're taking some measures to do that. And as we relax, what's happening is we get more and more cases each time. And now what I see more often than not, posts on Facebook and such, I see posts like, I'm so over COVID. I'm tired of COVID. You may be over COVID, but it's not over. It's getting worse. Now, the only positive thing I have to say about this is our fatality rate has not gone up. And that's because of the treatments that we have available. We have more treatments now available. So even though our number of cases are increasing a lot, we don't have an equal amount of deaths that we did before just because we're getting better at treating this. But it is still a very dangerous and deadly disease. We need to take it seriously. Now, from the beginning, we've been comparing this to the flu pandemic of 1918 in terms of its seriousness. And we saw similar peaks in the flu pandemic of 1918. There are tons of similarities, not just in when it occurred, but also our responses to the pandemic. As I've said in previous meetings, they had anti-masker leagues and people that were against masks, wearing masks, talking about how it violated their freedom, talking about how it increased their chances of getting infected and all that stuff. I can't breathe in these masks and all that. It's like those aren't new arguments. They were all done in 1918. There were tons of lies that were spread just like they were this year of it just being the flu. It's not that bad for different reasons. Back in 1918, it was because of World War One. Today, it's because of the economy, right? The outlook is all about money. So we worry about those things. And yes, we do need the economy. I'm not saying to shut down the country. I'm saying to do things better. And epidemiologists will agree. They don't think we should shut down the country. We don't need to shut down the country. We don't have to get that serious if people would just practice what they're supposed to be practicing. Wearing masks, social distancing, not gathering much place. There are some institutions that do have to shut down. People are griping about the fact that bars were shut down for a long period of time. What they fail to realize is that scientific data shows that bars are a place where we have a huge number of infections. Bars and restaurants are the most common places where people are getting infected nowadays. Why? Because you may have the mask on when you go in, but you're going to take it off to drink. You're going to take it off to eat. And that's when you're going to get infected. Okay? So this thing isn't over. And what's interesting, what's actually scary, is we look and compare this pandemic to 1918's. The fall wave was the worst wave for that pandemic. And it looks like it's going to be the worst wave for this pandemic again because it's going up and there's no sign that it's slowing down. So this is something we need to be worried about. You need to be worried about it because the holidays are coming up. Now, if you remember, if you watch the lecture video for chapter 1, there's a slide in there that I talked about knowledge is power. And then you may have watched PBS and all those shows, and they always say knowledge is power, knowledge is power. And I told you it's not. The practical application of that knowledge is actually power. So you need to learn how to practically apply the knowledge. And hopefully, as you've gone through this class, you've started practically applying the knowledge that you have gained, because that can help you out a lot, especially when you're in healthcare, and help you out during this pandemic. Help your family out too. One of the labs, it shows you how to wash your hands. Hopefully you're doing that correctly all the time. It talks about hand sanitizers and when to use hand sanitizers. You need hand sanitizers on you now more than ever because there are going to be a bunch of places where you have to hand sanitize, where you cannot wash your hands. Okay, so practically apply that knowledge. Carry the hand sanitizer with you. Make sure you carry it correctly. Otherwise, it's useless. And so you need to learn to practically apply the knowledge. So right now, you know, I've taught you, science has taught you that this pandemic is serious. This is a contagious disease. It's easily spread from person to person. Most of the people that are infected are asymptomatic. What that means is they don't have any signs and symptoms of disease. They look perfectly normal, but they can still spread the disease. Anybody can get infected. The misinformation says, oh, kids can't get infected. Yes, they can. You can see that if you look at any ISD's dashboard. I posted some on Teams. You will see infections all over the place. And those are only the ones that they have detected. Majority of the kids are going to be asymptomatic. So just imagine how many kids are actually infected running around those schools. Now, what's sad is that those kids are going to be spreading it to their parents, their grandparents, who are probably not going to be asymptomatic. And that's how this disease is going to spread. In a household with an infected person, 50% of those people in the household are expected to get infected. That's how it is spreading nowadays. One person brings it in, and 50% in the household get infected. In many cases, it's everybody in the household that gets infected. So you have to be very, very careful with that. So you know, asymptomatic people are the ones that are really driving this pandemic because they're not feeling any signs or symptoms. They're going out. They don't feel it. They don't feel the need to wear a mask. If they don't wear a mask, they're going to spread it all over the place. Even if you do wear a mask, if they're not wearing a mask, you're still likely to get it. So it takes everybody really wearing masks to stop this. You've seen so many super spreader events, weddings, right? Funerals are super spreader events, churches. And you think you're going to go to, if you're going to think about whether or not you're going to go to your Thanksgiving family gathering, that's really my big concern because you think about Thanksgiving family gatherings in the past. How many times have you gone to a Thanksgiving or Christmas for that matter? Because it's probably still going to be here till Christmas and those types of gatherings, and somebody's been sick. And if you're like me, and then the gatherings at my house, I tell people, if you're sick, do not come. I don't want you here because I don't want to get sick because I usually do get sick. And if I go to somebody else's house and they're sick, I try and avoid them as much as possible, but I usually end up getting sick anyway because that's just my luck. I end up getting sick. This has probably happened to pretty much everybody in this class where you go to a family gathering, somebody's sick, and the disease spreads from there. Same thing at churches. You'll see commonly see at churches. You know, they got, especially when I grew up in the Catholic Church, and you have times where they have the peace be with you, right? And you shake everybody's hands there. That's a good way to spread disease, right? Or some of the churches I've gone to, when you go in, they hug you. Another great way to spread disease. I'm not saying not to hug people, but I'm just saying it's not a good idea right now to be hugging every single person that goes into church. That is definitely a good way to spread disease. Uh, Once again, I'm Catholic. When I would take the communion, way back in the day, instead of having individual cups, they had one common cup where people drank out of the wine. Nowadays in my church, they have little bitty plastic cups that you can get. A lot of churches have that. But at my mother-in-law's church, they still have the single cup that's there. In the small town churches, they commonly will have the single cups instead of all the little plastic cups that are all around. So you have to think about those types of situations. There are a ton of people think that this isn't in small towns, and the data shows right now that it is. In Texas, our numbers are increasing not because of the increased infections in the larger towns, but in the increased number of cases in the smaller towns. My mother-in-law's small town has a population of about 4,300 right now. They just had an outbreak, 30 cases in one school. They shut down the school because of it, shut down the football season as well because of these cases. And they hadn't been hit with anything like this yet. The most they had in their town up to date was 1 or 2 cases at a time, right? And there were huge gaps where they didn't have anything. But now all of a sudden, they have 30 cases, and there are 40 tests that are outstanding. So they don't know the results on those yet. So it's kind of crazy. That's kind of a crazy situation for them to be dealing with right now. And that's right before Thanksgiving. So when you go and you try to decide whether or not you're going to go to that family gathering, think about that wedding I told you about on Labor Day. Now, 7 of that guy's family members are no longer here. They're dead just because of that one event. I don't want you to have those regrets. I want you to practically apply your knowledge. If you choose to go, then that's up to you. Okay, but realize that there's a risk that's involved with going, and it's a huge risk. Think about whether or not it's worth it. For some of y'all, it may be worth it, depending upon your situation. If for others, I mean, if you're just doing it just for the fun of it, then it may not. Think about those people, whether or not they're going to be here in a matter of a month, or how much they're going to be suffering because of those visits. So it's just, I want you to make sure that you are informed about this disease so that you can make the proper decision for you and your family. And I know it's a tough decision because a lot of us have been sequestered inside of our houses. You go to work, you come home. Right? You go to work, you come home. A lot of things aren't open. Some people are just going out to restaurants. Like I said, that's a major way that people are getting infected. So some people have had releases, but in other cases you haven't, and you need a release somehow. So that's why it's really, really tough. You want to see these people. Yeah, I want to see my in-laws, but I'm not going to go this Thanksgiving to go see them because it's not safe at all. So I just want you to practically apply that knowledge that I've given you because that's where you have power. We have the power to stop this almost in its tracks. And other countries have shown that it can be done, but we're not doing it. We need to apply that knowledge. So please apply that knowledge, and hopefully nobody comes back to me with stories about how family members got sick over Thanksgiving holidays or Christmas holidays, right? Stay safe.